The lonely diner and the note left behind. The dim neon lights of the roadside diner flickered against the foggy evening, casting pale shadows on the wet pavement. Inside, the faint aroma of greasy fries and overbrewed coffee filled the air. The rain had begun its steady drumbeat on the roof, creating a soothing rhythm that masked the muted hum of the diner's few patrons. It wasn't the kind of place people lingered in. It was a stop-and-go spot for truckers and late-night wanderers seeking a warm meal and a moment's solace. Adam Malone pushed the door open, his steel-toe boots squeaking against the tiled floor. His shoulders were hunched, the weight of years etched into his posture despite being only 35. His oil-streaked hands and faded work jacket bore the unmistakable signs of a man accustomed to hard labor. Tonight, though, Adam wasn't just seeking a meal. He was seeking an escape from the echoes of his empty apartment, from the memories of the family he'd lost, and from the guilt that seemed to shadow his every step. Sliding into a booth by the window, Adam let out a long sigh and picked up the laminated menu, its edges frayed from years of use. He wasn't hungry, at least not for food. What he craved was the feeling of being somewhere, anywhere, that wasn't home. "Hi there, what can I get you to drink?" came a soft voice. Adam looked up to find a young waitress standing before him, her smile faint but genuine. She couldn't have been more than 23, yet her hollowed eyes and weary stance spoke of a life lived far beyond her years. Stray strands of chestnut hair fell loose from her bun, and her uniform bore faint stains, the kind that don't come out no matter how hard you scrub. Her name tag read Lila. "Just coffee," Adam replied, his voice gruff. Lila nodded, her pen hovering over her notepad. She hesitated for a moment, as if she wanted to say something but thought better of it, and walked back to the counter. Adam's eyes lingered on her retreating figure. She seemed distracted, fumbling with the coffee pot and barely responding to the cook's orders behind the counter. When she returned, she placed the steaming mug in front of him, her hand trembling slightly. Adam noticed her fingers were smudged with pen ink, as if she'd been scribbling down something before coming to work. "Long shift?" he asked, breaking the silence. Leela looked startled, as if she hadn't expected anyone to care. "Yeah," she said softly, avoiding his eyes. "It's been a lot." Adam nodded, taking a sip of his coffee. He didn't pry further, though something about her tone tugged at him. He knew that kind of exhaustion. He'd seen it in his own reflection too many times to count. As Leela walked away to tend to another table, Adam's gaze shifted to the rain streaking the window. Outside, the world blurred, much like his own thoughts. He found himself wondering about Leila's story. What was weighing her down? What kind of battles was she fighting? And why did he feel such an inexplicable pull to find out? Minutes passed, and Adam nursed his coffee in silence. Across the diner, he watched as Leela leaned against the counter, her shoulders slightly slumped, her eyes staring blankly at the clock above the grill. She wiped at her face quickly, trying to be discreet, but Adam caught the movement. It wasn't just exhaustion, it was something deeper. When she returned to refill his coffee, Adam decided to speak. "You okay?" he asked, his tone low but genuine. Leela hesitated, the question catching her off guard. "Yeah," she replied too quickly. Then, after a moment, she sighed. "No, not really." Adam raised an eyebrow, surprised by her honesty. Most people would have brushed off the question with a polite lie. "Wanna talk about it?" Leela bit her lip, glancing around the diner. It was nearly empty now, save for an older couple in a corner booth. She set the coffee pot down and leaned against the table, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm just trying to keep it together," she admitted. "Bills are piling up. My mom's sick, and I've been picking up extra shifts to pay for her medication. It's just a lot." Her voice cracked, and she quickly looked away, blinking back tears. Adam didn't respond right away. He wasn't the type to offer platitudes or pretend he had answers. But something about Lila's raw vulnerability stirred a long-buried empathy in him. He knew what it was like to feel overwhelmed, like the world was too heavy to carry on your own. "You're doing more than most people could handle," he said finally. "And for what it's worth, I think that says a lot about the kind of person you are." Lila blinked, clearly not expecting such kindness. She gave him a small, grateful smile before returning to the counter. Adam watched as she busied herself with small tasks, her shoulders seeming a little less slumped. When he finished his coffee, Adam reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a notepad. He wasn't sure why, but he felt compelled to write something. He scribbled down a few sentences, his words unpolished but sincere. Folding the note, he tucked it beneath his coffee cup and left a generous tip beside it. As he walked out into the rain, he glanced back through the window and saw Lila picking up the note. Her expression shifted from confusion to surprise as she unfolded it. Adam didn't wait to see her full reaction. He wasn't looking for gratitude or acknowledgement. He just hoped his words would give her a moment's comfort, a small light in the darkness. What Adam didn't know was that the note he left behind would set off a series of events that neither of them could have ever anticipated. It wasn't just a message. It was a spark, one that would ignite a transformation in Layla's life and eventually ripple far beyond the confines of that small diner. The chain reaction. Lila unfolded the note with trembling hands, her heart pounding as she wondered what the stranger had written. Her tired eyes scanned the shaky handwriting, and her breath caught in her throat. Asterisk, asterisk, hey, Lila. I don't know you, and I'm just passing through, but I see how hard you're working. Life might feel impossible right now, but you're stronger than you realize. The world needs people like you, people who care, people who fight for others even when no one's fighting for them. Don't give up. You're making a difference, even if it doesn't feel like it. A stranger, asterisk, asterisk. Biting her lip, Lila folded the note back up and slipped it into her apron pocket. She didn't realize how much she needed those words until they were staring back at her, raw and unvarnished. It wasn't just the sentiment. It was the idea that someone had seen her, really seen her, in a way that few ever did. She wiped away a tear and took a deep breath, her chest feeling lighter than it had in weeks. That night, as the diner closed and the rain finally stopped, Lila walked home with the note clutched in her hand. She read it over and over again, each time finding a new kind of strength in the stranger's words. By the time she reached her small apartment, she had made a decision. She couldn't keep drowning in despair. She had to believe things could get better. The next day, Layla pinned the note to her refrigerator with a magnet. It became her mantra, a reminder that someone out there thought she mattered. But what she didn't expect was how much those words would inspire her to act. 2 weeks later, Layla was at the pharmacy picking up her mother's medication. The total came to $120, a figure that made her stomach churn. She handed over the cash she had earned from her extra shifts, but as she turned to leave, she noticed an elderly woman at the counter behind her. The woman was rifling through her purse, her face etched with frustration and embarrassment. "I'm sorry," the woman stammered to the pharmacist. "I thought I had enough, but Leela didn't hesitate. She stepped forward and slid a $20 bill onto the counter. "Here," she said softly, "let me help." The elderly woman looked at her in shock, her eyes welling with tears. "Oh dear, thank you. Thank you so much." "It's nothing," Layla replied, though she knew it was more than she could afford to give. Still, as she walked out of the pharmacy, a sense of warmth spread through her. It was the same feeling she'd had when she read the stranger's note for the first time. She realized now that kindness had a way of multiplying, creating ripples that reached farther than she could imagine. The elderly woman, Eleanor, left the pharmacy with her heart full. She hadn't expected a stranger to step in so selflessly, and it made her wonder if she could do the same for someone else. That evening, as she sat in her small living room, she wrote a letter to her granddaughter, Emily, who was away at college and struggling with her classes. Emily, I wanted to remind you of how proud I am of you. Life gets hard sometimes, But you've always had a way of rising above challenges. Don't forget how strong you are. And remember that it's okay to ask for help. I believe in you, more than you know. Love, Grandma ****. The letter arrived a few days later, and Emily read it while sitting on her dorm bed, surrounded by textbooks and notes. She had been feeling overwhelmed, questioning whether she was cut out for college at all. But her grandmother's words brought a wave of reassurance. She pinned the letter to her bulletin board, where it became a daily source of encouragement. Inspired by her grandmother's letter, Emily decided to start a study group for other struggling students. She posted flyers around campus and soon found herself surrounded by a small but determined group of peers who were also looking for support. Over time, the group grew, fostering a sense of community that helped its members thrive academically and emotionally. One evening, during a study session, Emily shared her grandmother's story about the stranger who had helped at the pharmacy. The group was moved by the tale, and they decided to pay it forward in their own way. They organized a campus-wide fundraiser to support local families in need, raising thousands of dollars over the course of a month. Meanwhile, Adam Malone had no idea the note he'd left in the diner was causing such a chain reaction. He was back to his usual routine, working long hours at the factory and spending his evenings alone. But something had shifted in him too. The act of writing that note had reminded him of the power of connection, and he started finding small ways to reach out to others. Helping a coworker with a project, striking up conversations with neighbors, and volunteering at a local food bank. One day, as he was leaving the food bank, Adam noticed a flyer on the bulletin board. It was an article about a fundraiser at a nearby college, organized by a group of students inspired by a story about a kind stranger in a pharmacy. Adam read the article twice, his heart pounding as he pieced together the thread of events. Could it be? Could the chain of kindness have started with the note he left for Leila? The ripple finds its voice. Adam stood frozen in front of the flyer, his heart beating faster with every word he read. The story detailed how a single kind act, a stranger helping an elderly woman at a pharmacy, had inspired a wave of generosity that culminated in a successful campus-wide fundraiser. Though no names were mentioned, the timeline and details were eerily similar to what had happened after he left that note at the diner. He couldn't shake the feeling that somehow, in ways he'd never expected, his small gesture might have sparked something much larger. The thought both humbled and overwhelmed him. Adam had always believed in quiet acts of kindness, but he'd never imagined they could snowball into something so extraordinary. That evening, as he sat in his small apartment nursing a cup of coffee, he couldn't stop thinking about Leila. He had often wondered how she was doing, whether his note had made any difference in her life. Now, he was determined to find out. Across town, Leila was wrapping up another busy shift at the diner. Her movements were still brisk and efficient, but something about her demeanor had changed. She carried herself with more confidence, her interactions with customers warmer and more genuine. The note Adam had left her had ignited a fire within her, a fire she hadn't realized she still had. She'd started taking small steps to improve her situation. First, she applied for a child care assistance program, which eased some of the financial burden on her. Then, she began researching night classes at the local community college, hoping to earn a degree that would allow her to provide a better future for her daughter, Mia. One evening, as she was clearing tables, she overheard two customers talking about a fundraiser they'd attended at the nearby college. They mentioned how inspiring it was to see young people working together to support struggling families. Leila smiled to herself, her thoughts drifting to the note still pinned to her refrigerator. It reminded her that even the smallest gestures could create ripples of hope. As the diner emptied out, Leila sat down at one of the booths with a cup of tea. She pulled out a notebook and began jotting down ideas for her own future. Maybe one day, she thought, she could do something similar. Start a program or an initiative to help single mothers like herself. The idea seemed far-fetched, but for the first time in a long time, she felt a spark of possibility. Adam couldn't stop thinking about Leila, so the next day, he decided to return to the diner. He wasn't sure what he would say or how she would react, but he needed to know if she was okay. As he walked through the door, the familiar smell of coffee and fried food greeted him. The place looked just as he remembered, though it felt different somehow, warmer. Leela spotted him as he entered, and her face lit up with recognition. "Hey, you're back," she said, her voice filled with genuine surprise. Adam smiled and nodded, taking the seat at the same booth by the window. "Yeah, I figured I'd stop by for some coffee. How have you been?" Leela poured him a cup and slid it across the table. "Better," she admitted, her tone more confident than he expected. "A lot better, actually. And I have you to thank for that." Adam raised an eyebrow. "Me?" She nodded, pulling a folded piece of paper from her apron pocket. "This note," she said, holding it up. "You have no idea what it meant to me. It came at a time when I was feeling completely lost. Your words, they reminded me that I wasn't invisible, that what I was doing mattered." Adam's chest tightened as he looked at the note. He hadn't expected her to keep it, let alone carry it with her. "I'm glad it helped," he said softly. "But you're the one who made the changes. You had that strength all along." Leela smiled, her eyes glistening. "Maybe. But sometimes you just need someone to remind you it's there." Their conversation deepened as Leela shared the steps she'd taken since receiving the note. She told Adam about the child care assistance, her plans for night classes, and her dream of starting a support network for single mothers. Adam listened intently, a sense of pride swelling in his chest. He hadn't done much, but knowing that his words had played a part in her journey was more rewarding than he could have imagined. As they talked, a young man sitting at the counter overheard their conversation. He had been nursing a cup of coffee, scrolling aimlessly through his phone, but something about their exchange caught his attention. He was a journalist for a small local paper, always on the lookout for stories that could inspire the community. Quietly, he took notes, deciding that this was a story worth sharing. The next week, an article appeared in the local paper titled, "The Note That Sparked a Movement." It recounted the story of Adam's gesture, Lila's journey, and the ripples of kindness that followed. The article highlighted the campus fundraiser, the elderly woman at the pharmacy, and the countless lives touched along the way. The story went viral, spreading far beyond the small town. People from all over began sharing their own stories of kindness, inspired by the idea that even the smallest acts could create waves of change. Social media lit up with the hashtag #KindnessRipple, and soon, communities everywhere were organizing their own initiatives to help those in need. Meanwhile, Leela found herself at the center of a growing movement. She was invited to speak at local events, sharing her story and encouraging others to believe in the power of small acts. Though she was initially nervous, she found that her words resonated with people. Her dream of starting a support network for single mothers began to take shape, with volunteers and donors stepping forward to help. Adam watched from the sidelines, amazed by how far the ripple had spread. He was reluctant to take credit, but Leela insisted he join her at one of the events. "People need to hear your side of the story," she told him. "They need to know how much of a difference one person can make." At the event, Adam shared his perspective, speaking about the importance of noticing the struggles of others and choosing to act, even in small ways. His words were met with thunderous applause, and for the first time, he realized the true impact of his gesture. The unexpected storm. The crowd at the community center was electric, buzzing with hope and inspiration as Leela stood at the podium. The once timid single mother now addressed a room packed with people of all walks of life. Volunteers, supporters, and families seeking guidance hung on her every word. "I used to think my story didn't matter," Leela said, her voice steady but full of emotion. "I thought I was just another struggling mom in a sea of people facing their own challenges. But one small act of kindness, one simple note, showed me that even in the darkest moments, someone sees you. Someone cares." The applause was deafening. Among the crowd, Adam sat quietly, a mixture of pride and humility washing over him. He had no idea that his note would lead to all this, a movement of kindness sweeping through the community like wildfire. Later that evening, after the event had wrapped up, Adam and Leela found themselves sitting on the steps of the community center. The air was crisp, carrying the faint scent of pine from the park nearby. Lila looked over at Adam, a soft smile on her face. "You know," she said, breaking the silence, "I still can't believe all of this started with that note." Adam chuckled, rubbing the back of his neck. "I can't either. Honestly, I wasn't even sure you'd read it." "Oh, I read it," Layla replied, her voice tinged with emotion. "I read it every day for weeks. It reminded me to keep going when I wanted to give up." Adam's smile faded slightly as he stared out into the darkness. "I wrote that note because I've been where you were, feeling invisible, lost, like nothing I did mattered." His voice softened, almost a whisper. "I just didn't want someone else to feel that way if I could help it." Leela placed a hand on his shoulder. "Well, you did help. More than you'll ever know." But not everyone celebrated the movement. In the weeks following the viral story, as donations poured in and local businesses offered support, a wave of skepticism and criticism emerged online. Some questioned the authenticity of the story, accusing Adam and Leela of fabricating events for attention. Others argued that kindness alone wasn't enough to address systemic issues, dismissing the movement as naive and idealistic. The harshest blow came when a local tabloid published an exposé, twisting Adam's past struggles with unemployment and depression into a narrative of failure. The headline read, "The Man Behind the Note, a Tale of Desperation or Inspiration." Adam was blindsided. The article painted him as a lonely, broken man seeking validation through grand gestures. Though parts of the story were true, he had struggled, and the note was born out of his own pain. The portrayal felt cruel and reductive. For the first time since the movement began, Adam questioned whether he had done the right thing. Had his note truly made a difference, or was it just a fleeting gesture blown out of proportion? Leela was furious when she read the article. She immediately called Adam, her voice trembling with anger. "Don't let them do this to you," she said. "You don't owe anyone an explanation. What you did came from the heart, and nothing they say can take that away." Adam sighed. "It's not just about me, Leela. What if this negativity hurts the movement? What if people stop believing in it because of me?" "They won't," Leela said firmly, "because this isn't just about you or me anymore. It's about all the people who've been touched by kindness and want to pass it on." "You started something incredible, Adam. Don't let a few voices of doubt drown out the good." Despite Lila's encouragement, Adam couldn't shake his self-doubt. He began pulling back from the public eye, declining invitations to events and avoiding social media. Leela continued to champion the movement, but she missed Adam's quiet strength and unwavering belief in the power of small acts. One evening, as she was preparing for another speaking engagement, she came across a letter in her mailbox. It was handwritten, the edges of the envelope slightly crumpled. Inside was a note from a woman named Margaret. The letter read, "Dear Leela, I don't know if you'll ever read this, but I wanted to thank you. I'm a single mother of 3, and things have been especially tough since my husband passed away last year. I saw your story online, and it gave me the courage to ask for help, a step I'd been too proud to take before. Because of you, my kids and I are part of a community that supports us, and for the first time in a long time, I feel like we're going to be okay. Thank you for reminding me that kindness is still out there. With gratitude, Margaret." Leela's hands trembled as she folded the letter. She knew she had to share it with Adam. When Leela showed up at Adam's apartment the next day, he was surprised to see her. "Leela, what's going on? I need you to read this," she said, handing him the letter. As Adam read Margaret's words, his eyes softened. The doubt that had been clouding his heart began to lift. He realized that the movement wasn't about him. It was about the people it helped and the lives it changed. "This is why we keep going," Leela said. "For people like Margaret, for every person who needs a little hope." Adam nodded, a renewed sense of purpose settling over him. You're right. It's not about us. It never was. In the following weeks, Adam rejoined the movement with a newfound resolve. He and Leela worked together to expand their efforts, reaching more communities and inspiring others to start their own initiatives. The backlash faded into the background as stories like Margaret's continued to emerge, each one a testament to the power of kindness. The ripple had become a wave, and it showed no signs of stopping. The test of resilience. Months had passed since the note had sparked the movement, and the community center had become a beacon of hope. Families in need were finding solace, volunteers were forging connections, and Leela had become a local symbol of resilience and transformation. Adam, too, had stepped into a more active role, speaking at gatherings and mentoring people who were navigating struggles similar to his own. Yet, as with any story of growth, challenges loomed just around the corner. The trouble began subtly, with whispers of financial strain at the community center. Donations that had initially poured in began to dwindle. Several key supporters had shifted their priorities, leaving the center struggling to meet its monthly operational costs. Leela and Adam sat together late one evening in the now empty building, poring over spreadsheets. The faint hum of the fluorescent lights above seemed louder in the quiet. "This can't be right," Leela muttered, running a hand through her hair as she stared at the numbers. "How did we fall behind so quickly?" Adam leaned back in his chair, his brow furrowed. "We expanded too fast," he said, his voice heavy. "We took on more families, more programs, but we didn't secure sustainable funding first." Leela buried her face in her hands. "I should have seen this coming. I was so focused on helping everyone that I didn't stop to think about how we'd keep it going." Adam reached out, placing a hand on her shoulder. "We'll figure it out," he said. "We always do." But even as he spoke, doubt crept into his mind. What if they couldn't fix this? What if the community center, the symbol of so much hope, had to shut its doors? The next day, Leela and Adam convened a meeting with their team of volunteers. The mood was somber as they explained the financial situation. "We've hit a rough patch," Leela admitted, her voice steady but tinged with worry. "But this center means too much to too many people to let it fail. We need ideas. Anything and everything that can help us raise funds and keep the doors open." The room buzzed with suggestions: hosting a fundraising gala, starting a crowdfunding campaign, partnering with local businesses. One volunteer, a retired teacher named Mrs. Harris, proposed organizing a community talent show. "Everyone in this town has been touched by the center in some way," Mrs. Harris said. "Let's give them a chance to give back. People love events like this, and it's a great way to bring the community together." The idea sparked enthusiasm, and soon, plans for the talent show were underway. As the talent show approached, Adam found himself spending more time at the center, helping with logistics and encouraging volunteers. But behind his calm demeanor, he was grappling with feelings of inadequacy. For years, he had convinced himself that his life was meant to be small and quiet. The movement had thrust him into the spotlight, and while he cherished the impact they were making, he often wondered if he was truly equipped for this role. One evening, as he was setting up chairs in the event hall, Leela approached him with 2 cups of coffee. She handed him one and sat down on the stage steps. "You've been quiet lately," she said, watching him closely. "What's on your mind?" Adam hesitated, then sighed. I don't know if I'm the right person for this. For any of this. I'm just a guy who wrote a note. I didn't plan any of this. What if I let everyone down?" Leela smiled gently. "Adam, do you know why that note meant so much to me? It wasn't because it was perfect or profound. It was because it came from someone who cared. That's all anyone needs from you, to care. And you've done that in ways you don't even realize." Adam looked at her, her words sinking in. He nodded slowly. "I guess I just need to remind myself of that sometimes." "We all do," Leela said, clinking her coffee cup against his. The night of the talent show arrived, and the center was packed with people, families, local performers, and small business owners filled the hall, eager to support the cause. The energy was infectious, and for the first time in weeks, Leela and Adam felt a glimmer of hope. The performances ranged from heartfelt to hilarious. A group of children sang an off-key rendition of a popular pop song, drawing laughter and applause. A local baker demonstrated her cake decorating skills, auctioning off the finished product to the highest bidder. An elderly man recited poetry he'd written about the town's history, his voice trembling with emotion. Leela took the stage near the end of the evening, thanking everyone for their support and sharing the center's mission. "This place exists because of you," she said, her voice strong and clear. "Every act of kindness, every contribution, every moment of your time has built something beautiful here. Together, we've shown what's possible when a community comes together." The audience erupted into applause, and as Leela stepped off the stage, she caught Adam's eye. He gave her a thumbs up, a rare smile lighting up his face. The talent show was a success, raising enough funds to cover the center's immediate expenses. But Leela and Adam knew it was only a temporary solution. They needed a long-term strategy to ensure the center's survival. In the days that followed, they began reaching out to local corporations, pitching the idea of sponsorships and partnerships. They met with city officials to discuss grants and public funding. It was an uphill battle, but they refused to give up. One afternoon, Adam received an unexpected phone call. It was from a woman named Erica, the CEO of a regional nonprofit that specialized in community development. She had heard about the talent show and the center's mission and wanted to meet with them. "I think we might be able to help each other," Erica said. When Adam and Leela met with Erica, they were struck by her passion for community work. She shared her own story of overcoming adversity and explained how her nonprofit had helped build similar centers in other towns. "We believe in empowering communities to sustain themselves," Erica said. "With the right resources and guidance, your center can thrive and even become a model for others." The partnership felt like a lifeline. Over the next few weeks, Erica's team worked closely with Leela and Adam to develop a comprehensive plan for the center. They implemented new fundraising strategies, established a network of local donors, and launched programs that generated revenue while serving the community. For the first time in months, Leela and Adam felt a sense of stability. The center was no longer just surviving, it was flourishing. One evening, as they walked through the bustling halls of the center, Adam turned to Leela. "You know, I never imagined any of this when I wrote that note," he said. Leela laughed. "Neither did I, but here we are." Adam looked around, taking in the laughter of children, the smiles of parents, and the energy of volunteers. "It's incredible what one small act can lead to," he said. Leela nodded, "And it's just the beginning." As the partnership with Erica's nonprofit began to unfold, Adam and Leela found themselves in a whirlwind of meetings, workshops, and planning sessions. The community center's future started to look brighter, but with every step forward came new obstacles. One such challenge came in the form of resistance from a small but vocal group in the town. Some residents, influenced by stereotypes and misconceptions, accused the center of enabling laziness by offering free services. Others complained about the increased foot traffic in the area, citing noise and parking issues as reasons to shut the center down. The backlash stung. Leela had poured her heart into creating a safe space for everyone, and Adam had begun to see the center as a symbol of redemption, not just for himself, but for the community as a whole. The negativity felt like a betrayal. "We're trying to help people," Adam said during a late-night strategy session with Leela and Erica. "Why can't they see that?" "They will," Erica said firmly. "But change is hard for some people. It scares them. Our job is to show them the value of what we're doing, not just for the people who use the center, but for the entire town." To address the concerns, Leela organized a town hall meeting. It was a risky move, but she believed in transparency and dialogue. The event drew a crowd, supporters, skeptics, and everyone in between. Leela stood at the front of the room, her hands trembling slightly as she gripped the microphone. Adam sat in the front row, his presence a quiet but steady source of support. "Good evening, everyone," Leela began. "Thank you for being here. I know there are a lot of questions and concerns about the community center, and I want to address them head-on." She outlined the center's mission and shared stories of the people whose lives had been changed by its programs. A single mother who had found a job through the center's career workshops, a teenager who had discovered a passion for art in the after-school program, an elderly man who had overcome isolation through the social events. "This center isn't just about charity," Leela said. "It's about empowerment. It's about giving people the tools they need to build better lives for themselves and their families. And when they thrive, our entire community thrives." When she finished, the room erupted into applause, except for a few dissenters who remained silent. Then, to everyone's surprise, Adam stood up. Adam rarely spoke at public events, preferring to work behind the scenes. But tonight, he felt compelled to share his story. "Hi, I'm Adam," he began, his voice shaking slightly. "I'm not a public speaker, and I'm not a leader. I'm just a guy who made a lot of mistakes in life. I lost my job, my home, and for a while, my sense of purpose. But then, something amazing happened. I found this center. I found people who didn't judge me for my past, who saw me as more than my mistakes. And because of that, I found a way to start over." He paused, his eyes scanning the room. "This center didn't just give me a second chance. It gave me hope. And now, I'm here to tell you that hope is contagious. It spreads. It lifts people up. It changes lives. That's what this center is doing. And that's why it matters." There was a moment of silence before the applause began, hesitant at first, then thunderous. Adam sat down, his heart pounding, and Leela reached over to squeeze his hand. "You were incredible," she whispered. The town hall marked a turning point. While not everyone was won over, the center's supporters grew more vocal, drowning out the naysayers. Local businesses began to step forward with offers of sponsorship, and a few skeptical residents even volunteered to help out at the center, curious to see the impact firsthand. Meanwhile, Erica's team helped Leela and Adam organize a series of open house events, inviting the community to tour the center and see its programs in action. The events were a hit, drawing families, educators, and local leaders who left inspired and eager to contribute. Amid the progress, Adam faced a personal milestone. A man he had once worked with at the factory, a former friend who had distanced himself during Adam's darkest days, showed up at one of the open house events. "Adam," the man said, approaching him hesitantly, "I wasn't sure if it was you at first. It's been a long time." Adam nodded, his heart pounding. "Yeah, it has." The man shifted awkwardly. "Look, I heard about what you've been doing here. It's impressive. I just wanted to say I'm sorry for not reaching out when things got tough. I should have been there for you." Adam took a deep breath, then extended his hand. "We all make mistakes," he said. "What matters is what we do now." The handshake felt like a small but significant step toward healing. As the months passed, the community center continued to grow, its impact rippling outward in ways Adam and Leela could never have imagined. It wasn't just a place for people to find help. It was a symbol of what was possible when individuals and communities came together. For Adam, it was more than redemption. It was a reminder that even the smallest acts, a note, a handshake, a moment of kindness, could set off a chain reaction that changed lives. And for Leela, it was proof that resilience and vision could transform not just a community, but the world. The ripple effect of a simple act. Months after the grand opening of the community center, life in the small town began to transform in ways no one could have anticipated. The center had become a hub of activity, radiating hope and providing resources to families, children, and individuals who had long felt invisible. But the ripple effect of Layla's vision, Adam's resilience, and Erica's collaboration was far from contained within the walls of the center. It began spreading throughout the town and beyond. A chance encounter. One rainy evening, Lila was closing up the community center. The halls, usually bustling with chatter and laughter, were now quiet. She grabbed her coat and umbrella, ready to head home, when the sound of hurried footsteps echoed behind her. "Excuse me, are you Lila?" a voice called. She turned to see a young woman, no older than 18, standing nervously at the door. Her clothes were damp from the rain, and she clutched a plastic bag filled with what looked like schoolbooks. "Yes, that's me," Lila said gently, stepping closer. "How can I help you?" "I heard about this place from someone at my school," the girl stammered. "They said you help people who don't have anywhere else to go." Lila's heart ached at the vulnerability in the girl's voice. "That's exactly what we're here for. Come in out of the rain, and we'll talk." Over the next hour, the girl, whose name was Mia, shared her story. She had been kicked out of her home after revealing that she was pregnant. With nowhere to turn and no one to support her, she had been sleeping in a friend's car while trying to keep up with her high school classes. "We've got you," Lila assured her, her voice steady and warm. "You're not alone anymore. We'll figure this out together." The next day, Layla connected Mia with the center's resources, including housing assistance, prenatal care, and counseling. But more than that, she gave Mia something the young girl hadn't felt in months: hope. Adam's unexpected leadership. As the center continued to grow, Adam found himself stepping into a role he never imagined for himself: a mentor. At first, he was hesitant. "I'm no role model," he told Lila one afternoon as they prepared for a workshop. "You're wrong," Lila said firmly. "You've been through the fire and come out stronger. People need to hear your story. Not just the good parts, but the struggles too. That's what makes you relatable." Adam took her words to heart and began leading weekly sessions for men who were struggling with unemployment, addiction, or a lack of purpose. The group started small, just a handful of men sitting in a circle and sharing their stories. But week by week, the circle grew. One night, a man named Carlos, who had recently lost his job, spoke up. "You know, when I walked in here, I thought this was going to be a waste of time," he admitted. "But hearing you talk about how you turned your life around, it made me think maybe I can too." Adam nodded, feeling a surge of pride mixed with humility. "You can, Carlos. It's not easy, but it's worth it. And you don't have to do it alone. We're here for you." For Adam, those moments of connection were more fulfilling than anything he had experienced before. He realized that the center wasn't just changing other people's lives, it was reshaping his own sense of identity and purpose. Lila's growing influence. The success of the community center began to attract attention beyond the town. Local newspapers ran stories about the programs and their impact, and social media posts about the center's work went viral. Soon, nonprofit organizations from neighboring towns were reaching out to Lila, asking for advice on replicating the model. One day, Lila received an email from a national foundation inviting her to speak at a conference on community development. At first, she was overwhelmed. "Why me?" she asked Erica during one of their brainstorming sessions. "Because you're a leader," Erica said simply. "And because what you've built here is extraordinary." Lila's speech at the conference was a turning point. Standing on the stage, she shared the story of how a simple note left by a stranger had sparked a chain reaction that transformed not only her life, but the lives of countless others. Sometimes, all it takes is one small act of kindness to light a fire in someone's heart. She concluded, her voice steady despite the emotion welling up inside her. And when that fire spreads, it can illuminate an entire community. The audience gave her a standing ovation, and in the weeks that followed, Lila received dozens of invitations to collaborate on similar projects across the state. The ripple expands. Back in town, the center's success continued to inspire new initiatives. A group of local teachers started a tutoring program for underprivileged students. A retired chef began offering free cooking classes to teach families how to prepare healthy meals on a budget. and a group of artists painted a vibrant mural on the side of the center, depicting scenes of resilience, community, and hope. But perhaps the most unexpected ripple came from Mia. After giving birth to a healthy baby boy, she returned to school with the center's support. During her graduation speech, she credited the community center, and Leela in particular, with saving her life. "I thought my story was over," Maya said, holding her son in her arms. "But they showed me it was just beginning." Her words brought tears to Leela's eyes and earned her a standing ovation. The reunion. One quiet afternoon, Adam sat in the center's garden, reflecting on how far they had come. He was startled when a familiar voice called out, "Adam." He looked up to see a man in a crisp suit standing at the gate. It took him a moment to recognize the figure. It was the man who had left the note in the diner all those months ago. "You," Adam exclaimed, standing up. The man smiled, his eyes warm. "I didn't expect to find you here," he said, "but I'm glad I did. I've been following the center's progress, and I just had to see it for myself." Adam shook his hand, a mix of gratitude and amazement washing over him. "You have no idea what you started," he said. "I think I do," the man replied, his gaze sweeping over the vibrant, bustling community center. "But the truth is, I just gave you a nudge. The rest, you and Leela, you made it happen." The two men talked for hours, sharing stories and marveling at how a single note had set off a chain of events that neither of them could have predicted. The legacy. Years later, the community center became a model for similar initiatives across the country. Lila, Adam, and the man who wrote the note remained close friends, bound by the extraordinary journey they had shared. And though the note itself had long since faded, its message lived on, not just in the programs and buildings it had inspired, but in the hearts of the people whose lives had been touched by its ripple effect. Because in the end, the story wasn't just about a note. It was about the power of kindness, resilience, and the unbreakable connections that can change the world, one small act at a time.